John Reid, born 1871, made his living as a mining engineer. He was also an avocational archaeologist. He was born and died in Nevada. Over the course of his lifetime, he was obsessed with Lovelock Cave and the red-headed cannibal giants, known as the Si-Te-Cah. This name for Reid's giants came from the Paiute Indians. It meant tool eaters. The giants were known to wove tools, a fibrous plant, into rafts and navigate what was left of the ancient lakes in the northern Nevada area. The existence of these giants have been highly disputed by anthropologists and archaeologists for 140 years. In April of 2021, I was finally given the opportunity to go to the Nevada Historical Society and research 91 banker-sized boxes containing documentation left by Reid after he passed away. A large amount of the documents left were regarding Reid's business ventures he had over the course of his lifetime. However, some dealt with his research into the ancient history, Native American oral traditions, petroglyphs, pictographs, artifacts, and human remains. A large part of this documentation dealt with Lovelock Cave, the supposed site where multiple bands and tribes got together and supposedly wiped out the red-headed cannibal giants. Boxes 60 through 65 were marked as restricted, no longer viewable by the public. When I inquired as to why, I was told because it dealt with the new 2018 Nevada law. This law came about from SB 244 Assembly Bill back in March of 2017. It dealt with Native American historic preservation. After going back and forth between the museum and the BLM, state archaeologist in Carson City, I was finally granted permission to see parts of boxes 61 through 65. But because of the Native American Graves Protection and Repatriation Act and SB 244, box 60 remained restricted. No one would allow for the fossils or skull photos to be seen. I was told that the photos showed large skulls of remains of people that had to have been of large stature, but not giants. 22 items were removed from the remaining 5 boxes prior to my getting to the museum in Reno. This was fine. I'll take what I can get. I had the museum include 2 additional boxes based upon what I saw listed as subject matter. In total, I spent 3.5 days going through 7 boxes. It would take months to cover the vast amount of data that Reid had available. It would take several years to go through his math that he included. Reid had an extensive collection of documentation on the potential history of giants living long ago in the world. He was fascinated with the subject and interviewed countless number of Native Americans in his attempt to get to the truth. He seems to have concluded that the last of the giants, the Si-Te-Cah, died out around 1760-ish. That was not too long ago. This band's extinction occurred either in Nevada or Oregon. Of interest is that the findings taking place in the 19th and early 20th century point toward the giants of the Americas having been over 10 feet tall prior to the end of the last ice age. Interestingly enough, the flora and fauna where the giants lived were larger, thus allowing larger humanoids to find adequate sustenance. Large lakes were located where these bands and groups of supposed giants lived. Most of those lakes no longer exist. Those that do are just a pond, compared to what they were several hundred years ago and earlier. Many of Reid's findings and archaeological work were taken very seriously in the academic community. He was responsible for several archaeological excavations taking place by the University of California. The boxes at the Historical Museum in Reno even had correspondence between Reid and the President of the United States, attempting to have the lands of the giants turned into national monuments. Articles found in newspapers at the time seemed to show a lot of discoveries where the findings were potentially humans or humanoids of large stature. This article from 1923 hints toward a race of humans or humanoids that predated the mound builders. Underground dwellings seem to be the norm. As many of you know, I conduct research on the giants that are seen in the historical data from Utah. The hydrocarbon material known as gilsonite can only be found on the Uinta Basin in northeastern Utah. Does this show proof that the giants expanded out from the basin, or at least traded over a large area? The article speaks about objects made from gilsonite being found as far away as southern Nevada. I found this article that Reid kept of interest. We have several Native American oral traditions about a reptilian humanoid race that lived deep within Mother Earth. Does this article from the early 20th century discuss those beings? Were there multiple worldwide cataclysmic events that caused us to lose historical data? Were some of the losses from these cataclysmic events entire races of species that existed on our planet before the recorded history? The Mesoamerican cultures openly discussed their encounters with giants, or at least humans of great stature. The Toltec ancestors were so fed up with the giants enslaving them that they teamed up and supposedly fought back, just like what the Paiute Indians did with the Si-Te-Cah in present-day Nevada. Even the Olmec have artifacts that may be objects showing people of large stature with red hair. The Fremont people may have disappeared from history, but not before documenting giants they came across. In Dry Fork Canyon, just outside of Vernal, Utah, the Fremont documented the giants. Many were shown with the characteristic 6 digits on hands and feet, or 6 fingers with big feet. Recently, I have come to believe that the Si-Te-Cah were not red-headed cannibal giants. Oral tradition from the Paiute, Ute, and Navajo now look to show that the cannibalism part was introduced to get the masses of Native Americans to rise up against their enemy, the Si-Te-Cah, eventually exterminating them from the planet. However, the giants, or at least what were left of them after mating with humans, the Si-Te-Cah, were actually headhunters. They took trophies for sure. Look at the petroglyphs behind me. The symbol to the right of this giant, the one that looks like the epsilon symbol, most likely was used by the Native Americans to show that they were pecking or painting the giants. The same symbol has been associated with giants from all over the world. This symbol and attachment to giants of old is seen everywhere on the European island of Sardinia. Even in the Bible, considered historical text, it too states that those descendants of Rapha, he who was large in stature, had 6 digits on the hands and feet. This is again in Utah. The anthropomorphic figures look to be symbolizing the giants. Their heads are in the shape of the epsilon. The shield or objects they are carrying are like what the Nuragic culture of Sardinia had in their artifacts, showing the giants that lived on the island with the Nuragic people over 5,000 plus years ago. These are the giants of Sardinia. These statues were created by the Nuragic culture. They're labeled as a Bronze Age civilization existing thousands of years ago. How far back did the giants exist before them? Remember that giants were not always 10 feet tall or taller. They were forced to mate with humans at some point, causing a drastic reduction in height. At the end, we were left with the Si-Te-Cah. Thanks again for watching. Please subscribe to my channel. I will continue to put out material on Skinwalker Ranch, Blind Frog Ranch, portals, giants, past worldwide catastrophic events that caused us to lose historical knowledge, and some unexplainable events and happenings. Until next time, take care.